All right.
Thanks, Peter.
Now, I'd like to introduce Denis Ginnivan. Denis is a grassroots political leader who is, and I hope I get this right, he's the immediate past president and a foundation member of Voices for Indi, which was a community-based organisation in northeast Victoria seeking to encourage citizens to participate in politics and democracy. Denis occupied a key senior leadership roles in 3 successful independent Indi campaigns in 2013, 16 and 19. He's also the Deputy Chair of Totally Renewable Yackandandah, another community group which maximises opportunities for renewable energy uptake. And Denis is working with the community to explore the type of actions and future directions participants might like to take to strengthen and increase the resilience of their community, which is what Denis will be talking about today, but I'm sure he's open to participants asking him about his renewable energy yak and other issues that he might have at a later date. And that reminds me as well, anybody that does have questions and doesn't get to ask them this morning, I'm more than happy to take messages from any of the participants and pass them on to the speakers, and hopefully we might be able to get an answer for you or have a discussion. There was a discussion earlier about on the chat line about Massey's book and Peter Andrews' Mickey Weir regenerative agriculture type processes. I won't go into that this morning, but I'm sure as many people in FCA would love to have a discussion about that as well. So I'll now call on Denis to explain what he's done in the past and hopefully encourage people to think about participating in sort of participatory democracy in the future. Denis.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me all right, Peter?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
That's better. Yeah, that's better still.
Okay. It's just a bit noisy. So, hello and good morning. I've just got an echo here.
Just a minute, I'll try and see who might be online and flick them off. No, everybody's pretty much muted. I'll mute myself in case it was myself. How's that, Denis?
Better?
Yep, seems good. You're right, Denis?
How's that now?
Excellent.
Excellent. That's better? Okay, thank you very much. I do apologise for that. And thanks, Peter, for the introduction, and hello and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank Farmers for Climate Action for the opportunity to speak here at this forum. As Peter indicated, my focus is going to be on having your collective voice heard. And just by way of a little bit of introduction, further introduction, I'm supporting individuals and groups under my small business Events that Matter to consider how to implement strategies. Those people who may be feeling not happy or rusted off, to coin a Gabriel Chan's a phrase, not happy with the way they're being represented. Maybe it's around issues that have been raised today: climate, environment, energy, and transitions to new forms of energy, the people in all of this, and the rural communities, towns, and farm people. Those who want to do something in a positive way to engage, to improve the connection with their local representation, and who want to consider how they as citizens can better connect with the political process and their representatives. So for myself, having lived and worked in rural Australia most of my life, the issue of effective rural political representation has always been a real one for me. And my perspectives is drawn on, as you said, the work in relation to Voices for Indi as a former member. I don't represent Voices for Indi now, but I want to acknowledge the groundbreaking work which that group has done over the years since 2012 to improve the opportunities for people to see how they can get involved in democracy and public participation. I encourage you to visit their website and see what important work has been done. Also recommend, for those who may be of interest, the Voices of Warringah group's website and the report that they developed and how they formed in 2018, and how they implemented a strategy in that federal seat. And separately, in relation to those three campaigns, I want to acknowledge those three election campaigns. I acknowledge all the people that came together in and around the campaigns of Helen Haynes and Cathy McGowan. I don't represent either of those politicians nor the community, but I can talk about my own experiences and observations through all of that time, and to refer to processes and reports which are in the public domain. I can speak about my work with other fledgling community democracy groups, which are limited primarily to rural areas, but there's some elsewhere in urban and semi-urban areas as well. And in relation to my work with Totally Renewable Yak, which was formed in 2014, it's a community group that's sort of grown up in this era of within Indi of community having a raised voice and a raised opportunity to do what they wish to do and project a direction that is in their interests. Its key goal when it formed was to get to 100% renewable energy by 2022. And I reckon that's going to be possible. When it first started, I thought they've got to be dreaming, but now it has become a serious challenge and opportunity to get to. Encourage people to check out their Totally Renewable Yackandandah's website too on the work that they've done. So the link and cooperation between the community and a federal member is a really good demonstrator of what has been achieved together. So this is a bit like the future, and we'll talk back to this. But just last Friday, Helen Haynes and a group of local people here in this region launched a nationally focused discussion paper inviting feedback on rural community energy to cut energy costs and limit the $158 million which leaves the region annually, become a driver for rural employment and improving economic and environmental outcomes. I encourage you to Google Helen Haynes Renewable Energy or words to that effect to see her media release and download that discussion paper. But I'll just use that as an example of the way in which community can work positively with federal, in this case, federal representation. One of the key initial drivers in all of this for me was, and as most people didn't want to be involved in as a member of an established party, could it be possible to constructively participate in democracy? How do you even get to participate if you're not a member of a party? In fact, the Richmond Football Club, for those who are more southern in the region, they have more members than all of the political parties in Australia do collectively. There's a smaller and smaller number of people who are having a larger and larger impact on how things get done. And I would argue that rural people can be partly the collateral damage in all of that process as the voice. And if we can respond to opportunities to increase our voice, great. But I think the broad pathway unaddressed is one of a challenge to getting our voices heard. Anyway, just back to Voices for Indi, when it got going, I personally was keen to be involved. We were talking about inviting interested rural people to numerous small discussions to invite them to have a say around a whole range of issues. This was done respectfully and transparently, with people feeling that for the first time in their lives, their views were actually listened to and recorded. And I recall as an example of a gentleman who was attending one of the group groups that I was facilitating, and he looked like he was there under duress. He'd been encouraged to participate in a community conversation process, maybe against his sort of will. And he was giving vibes of not being too interested in it. And when it got to a point where we were asked him, what do you think, Michael, about where you're at, how things are going? He listed a number of things that he felt were strongly, for him, were really strong and important things that he was facing. And when we reflected back to him what it is that he had said, he said, nobody's ever listened to me before. He had been used to the idea of people talking but not listening. And the process that I'll talk about in a little bit more detail was one of working hard and focused in a disciplined way to ensure that people do get listened to and do have a sense that their views will carry further. So the process, kitchen table conversations, which had been initially developed many years prior to hear rural Victorians' voices about water use, which was developed with the help of the Victorian Women's Trust, was adapted and engaged with for over 550 people within Indi. This is back in 2013. Many of whom had never participated in a public discussion before about the things that mattered to them. The dynamics of the meeting were that it was, as you can imagine, when we're speaking about politics, it can be difficult. People can be loud. They can be maybe expressing a view that, look, you're wrong and I'm right. We had a process of ensuring that all the people in the room got to say what it was that they felt that was important to them. It was recorded and captured into a report that it can be now found on the Voices for Indi's website. It's an iconic report, and it's become like the demonstrator, I think, for a lot of groups and people who want to understand how can that be done. Anyway, through that consultation, there was a lot of inquiry and requests for the idea of maybe if we can't get our voices heard, maybe an independent could stand, and Voices for Indi undertook a process to identify and select an independent candidate who was going to stand on, and who did stand on, the mandate that had been captured in that report, what it is that people in Indi are saying. Kathy McGowan was successful in that selection process. She stood on the back of it, as I said, on the back of that, the issues that were raised through the process, and won a first federal election for her, first time in Indi, where an independent had been voted in 2013. And at that point, the community group, Voices for Indi, came away from the campaign and political process, but focused more on the democracy, public participation, running a workshop, bringing guest speakers, workshops around how to get elected and how to be a politician. So Kathy was also successful in the 2016 campaign as well. And that link between the MP and the community, and thus not a party, is a key defining difference for an independent who is free to more directly represent the community. In early 2019, Helen Haynes was successfully chosen, and she emerged from another Voices for Indi candidate selection process, identification and selection process. Though this time, that identification selection was undertaken by around 230 members of the community. And importantly, the committee of Voices for Indi didn't participate in that. So it was really a genuine selection by the community of who it was that community wanted to represent them. So that Indi way sort of captures some key elements, the Indi way of a community rising up, and that is community invited to find its own power. Citizens have a responsibility to respect and engage in democracy. Values and commitment, values are there to ensure people commit to ensure that people have a trust in the process. I think some of the speakers earlier indicated the idea of where people aren't just individuals, that the relational aspect of getting involved is really important. And when a community or a larger group of people decide to embark on a different course, then a lot of new energy can be tapped. This Indi, this way of community up, finds and supports its own candidates, brings the voices forward to public opportunities to discuss issues that are important, that people feel that they need to find a way to adapt to circumstances. There's a culture of delegated autonomy and power back to local communities to develop their own voice. And through this process, there's not only been a focus on the issues like the ones I mentioned earlier, the climate, integrity, drought, flood, resilience, but we also wanted to talk about the processes around ethics and transparency. So there's values that have shaped the way in which this community rising has occurred. So there's some of the key things that I wanted to raise just now. I'm more than happy to speak in more detail in response to questions. But Peter, if I can pass that back to you, and let me know how you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Dennis.